Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending on where you are. I want to thank you guys for coming today. Um, we are, first of all, can you guys see my screen? That might help.
Yes.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about how to e-file 1099s without the headache with our partner Avalara. If you guys have any questions throughout the event, you can throw them down into the chat box and we'd be happy to answer them. If you have questions afterwards, you can contact any single one of us here at PeopleSense. You can contact Jim Castellano, our president and owner, myself, Jessica Canellis, for Intuitive. You can contact Gary Cerny. For Made to Manage, you can contact James Cooey. If you're interested in a new ERP, HR, payroll, time and attendance, you can email Jim McCormick. Or if you are looking for a document management integration, you can contact Brendan James. So I'm going to go ahead and give it over to Kevin from Avalara so we can get this started.
All right. Thanks, Jessica. We'll go ahead and get everything rolling here in just a minute. All right. So we should be sharing, and the screen should be showing up with the little Avalara PeopleSense logos at the top, right?
Correct.
Great. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. As Jessica said, I'm Kevin Hughes from Avalara. I'm a strategic alliance manager here at Avalara. I work with PeopleSense and a variety of other partners from a partnership perspective, and we're going to talk a little bit about 1099s today and some of the other things around that. So as she said, everybody at PeopleSense is happy to talk to you more about any other questions you have about this or any of the other solutions that they offer. If we have questions throughout, feel free to use the chat here in the meeting if you want, or we can follow up during or afterwards, depending on what you prefer. So we'll go ahead and get things rolling here just a little bit early. If a couple other people join in, we can certainly get things going at that point. This meeting is going to be recorded, so don't be alarmed by that. So we're going to go ahead and advance, and there's a safe harbor statement that I have put on the screen. So we'll go ahead and move on there to the agenda. What we're looking at here is just a couple of quick things we're going to cover. So we're going to go through a little bit about our company, just one or two slides, I promise. 1099s, W9s, kind of some of the issues around those, the solutions that we can help you offer for that. Some of the things our customers say, and a couple other follow-up items at the end. So again, about 20 minutes, shouldn't be too far at all into our time. And we do have some time built in for questions as well at the end too. All right, some legally required things. I think in every presentation, you've got to start a little bit about Avalara. So I'll go ahead and start that. Long story short, I won't read everything on the screen, but we do a lot of things for a lot of people all around the world, mainly around tax compliance. I consider 1099s to be tax compliance, but there's all sorts of other things that we do outside of those, whether it's tax calculation, exemption certificates, returns. The full year of 2024, we filed more than 6.6 million returns. I think that's probably going to be well over 7 million for 2025. And the numbers keep going up. We've now got over 43,000 customers just about everywhere in the world that we have now. And we have a whole lot of different partner integrations similar to what our friends at PeopleSense have as well. So just about any software that you have, we probably have an integration to it from a tax calculation perspective. We work with a lot of other customers as well all around the world, which is really what this slide is telling you there. And we'll go ahead and get into the meat of it here, which is the 1099 and W9 compliance piece and a little bit about that. We'll start with some of the basics there. Just about every company has to file 1099s, and they rely on vendors and freelancers and all sorts of other people like that. The IRS needs that information to get the income reported. So they have to have a certain avenue for that, and 1099s are how that works. There's all sorts of different form types that we have here, and I know a lot of you probably have seen a lot of these forms either in your company or forms that you've received, but really when it comes down to it, there's two main ones, the 1099 and the W9. All these forms, we just say 1099 W9, but we do support all of these different forms that many of you have to file. I'm lucky as an individual, I probably only get about 5 of these forms every year that I have to see, but I know some people have a whole notebook full of forms that they get for a variety of different reasons at tax time and beyond. So as we look through here, the W9, if you're not familiar, That's how you get the TIN, the taxpayer identification number, from somebody that you're going to pay during the calendar year. And it's just a way to get that information. The 1099 is what you have to file with the IRS to report that income paid, and that has a lot of the W-9 information as well as some additional information about what you've actually paid. They have get payment from you throughout the calendar year. There's some certain forms with certain dollar amounts and certain limitations that they have there. That's something you're going to have to file. We'll get into a little bit more detail here in a bit on exactly what that looks like. All right, as you guys probably know, because you're attending the webinar here today, you're often caught in the middle between the 1099s and the W-9s. So usually the contractor will give you a W-9 because it's something you require to work with them, and everything's easy so far. And then you have to file the 1099 with the IRS with all the information you receive from that W-9 from that contractor. So then all of a sudden, we have to send that 1099 back to them so they can file their own taxes. Right now it's January. Often that happens in January, depending on the form that you have to fill out. This is a pretty popular time for 1099s. And then often, sometimes the IRS is going to send you an audit to see if you have the original W-9 just to make sure you did everything correctly. So you're kind of having to answer to a lot of different people and put a lot of different information together when it comes to that. So there's a lot of different pieces around that, but mainly it's not very efficient. And there's some liabilities if you do it wrong that the IRS is going to, that's why they often might audit you and just verify what's going on there. I don't like to use the A word, audit, very often when it comes to the way that we work with customers, but the IRS is famous for that. So that is something that happens quite often. There's a lot of different challenges that we see around this process. The first challenge that we see a lot is the timing when it comes to that. The IRS deadline is January 31st. It's a very rigid deadline, and if you don't make that date, then they're going to have a lot of late fees that come up, and you have a lot of different vendors you have to get figured out, but they don't care. Their deadline is rigid that they have for those particular forms. They have a lot of other things that they require, and a lot of those move around when it comes to the way that the IRS has different regulations and rules that they have. There's a little example here that we like to highlight. You know, back in the 2024 deadline, the IRS reduced everything down to $600 for the 1099Ks, and they reduced the electronic filing down just 10 forms. If you have 10 forms, then you had to do everything electronically instead of manual. So they like to do some changes. Sometimes those changes are good. Sometimes they may not be so good. Sometimes it may require more automation and more record keeping, which is usually the case with the IRS. So just keep in mind that just because things were a certain way last year doesn't mean they're going to be that way this year. If we've learned anything in the last 12 months of being around the government, is that things change very quickly. You know, here at Avalara, we do a lot of the other compliance pieces. One of those is tariffs. So we've had a lot of changes, even in the last 2 weeks, let alone the last 12 months, when it comes to tariffs and tax calculation. 1099s, all those things are no exception. When it comes to the people that you deal with, you know, they also have things going on outside of what the IRS thinks. You know, the different agencies and different people, they need to file information. Maybe they have changed their names. You know, maybe they didn't have W-9 information for you. Maybe they've moved, which a lot of people have in the last couple of years. So you just never know what's going on the back end, but you are responsible for having all that correct information in the system and making sure that it is up to date. So a lot of times you can't send electronic versions of the 1099 unless someone has specifically, it's hard to say, specifically opt in for the electronic delivery, and they always have to have a means to opt out as well to get the printed version. That's why you see so many printed versions. I think a lot of people don't want to jump through those hoops, but electronic is an option. You know, I myself receive some electronic versions and some printed versions, just depending on the vendors that I deal with. So you never know what that is, but there's a lot of different requirements around that as well. One of the other things that we see a lot are rejected filings also. You know, a lot of times you're copying and pasting. If it's electronic, you know, heaven forbid you actually have to key something in, then the opportunities for error get even worse. You know, we've got the wrong legal name. Maybe it's an accurate name. Maybe they got married. Maybe you spelled it the way you thought it should be spelled instead of the actual way. Maybe we had the wrong tax identification number or social security number, depending who you're working with. on the form. Sometimes you don't put the state on the form, which of course they'll reject immediately, depending on that too. There's just a lot of opportunities there for error that we see. Believe it or not, I had an issue a couple years ago with a couple of my family where their social security numbers got switched. They both happened to work at the same company a couple years apart, and the file form came in to us in January, and we started to look at it, and it had the wrong social security number on it. It had the correct person who worked and the correct earnings, but the social security or the TIN was incorrect. So you never know what's going on there, but I didn't figure it out until I tried to file, and then I had to go back and get all the forms redone and go through a lot of extra steps for that. One of the other pieces we see is different states have different requirements as well. Back in 2023, there was a couple different changes that were made that we like to highlight. California is famous for having a lot of changes in their revenue system. They had some direct filing that they required, even if you did combine federal and state filing, they had some direct filing they required in California. Over in South Carolina, if any state income tax was withheld, they had to have things on a CD-ROM in an IRS format and mailed to the Department of Revenue. And this was in 2023. It wasn't that long ago. So Oklahoma had some other changes as well. They had a particular 1099 NEC form that had to be filed directly, even though some other things were done with the federal state filing program. So keep in mind, there's all sorts of different things with each state. Each state is different. Each state makes changes on their own. As you've probably seen, if you start to look at multiple states, every single one seems to do things differently for no reason at all other than just to be different and maybe difficult. So you never know what you're going to find when you go from state to state. The other thing that we see are the risks that we see, especially when it comes to the IRS. They might have to withhold some payments if you do things wrong. There's some fines that start, and they might have some backup withholdings and different notices depending on how bad things get. They have some penalties as well for each W-9 that's missing if they do have an audit that we talked about a little bit earlier. Just a whole lot of things, even just from the IRS, where you have to start thinking about the risks and what's going on and making sure that you're doing things 100% correctly. You've also got some vendor risk and some things on that side that you have to think about. You have to take care of TINs and social security numbers. With W-9 forms, it's a required part of that form. That's not something you want to just throw in a standard PDF and put on an unsecured drive that's sitting in the middle of your company, or you're carrying an airplane, something like that. A lot of data breaches when it comes to those can result in some severe consequences. You've all heard of the different consequences of a lot of the large companies with data breaches, but those hit small companies as well. So you never know what's going to happen with that, but it's just something to keep in mind that once you start keeping credit card numbers, just like credit card numbers, social security numbers, all the different information like that, you've got a different standard that you have to live up to when it comes to security and information technology. Really, when it comes down to it, you have to spend a lot of time to get this right. And even if you have 12 of these or 112 of these or 1,000 of these, it's just a lot of time that you don't want to have to spend. It's not efficient. We have some customers that have different stories that we can get into here in a little bit. One of them, they spent $200 in late fees each year since they couldn't ID recipients and they had invalid information that kept coming back. We had another one that used to spend $450 just in paper stock. So they had the exact paper stock that they needed to fill out forms and print forms. I got an email the other day, Costco's trying to sell me these forms now. So there's lots of different people, lots of different places to buy the forms. You have to make sure you get the right ones, print the right information, all sorts of things like that. So there's just a whole lot of different pieces and parts around that you have to keep track of, and it's just not really an efficient use of a professional's resource, and you don't really want to have the lowest paid person in the organization trusting them with this type of information either. So automation seems to be a pretty good way to go. That's a built segue into Avalara and what our solution is. Aptly named Avalara 1099 and W9. As we said, we have all those different forms we handle, but we just call it 1099 W9. We can easily collect those W-9s from vendors, manage all their information in a secure location, easily e-file 1099s, and a lot of other information directly to the government. We also have e-delivery corrections. We can do postal delivery, tax identification number validation and correction, state filings, all sorts of different things like that too. So that's what our solution can do. The first part there, collecting W-9s efficiently, we can make that a lot easier. We can do some matching if we want for those tax identification numbers to make sure, or we can skip that part depending on where you're at in the process and how many new people you have, those types of things. So we can send email campaigns to the contractors. We can integrate with different portals and marketplaces to collect documents that are already out there. We can also do real-time validation of the TINs and the Social Security numbers with the IRS. You don't have to worry about that process as well. So anything we can get done quickly and get done correctly and electronically makes it a lot easier for you. Once we get that basic information, we can also manage all those forms. We have them in a central repository so that we do have the IRS or somebody coming to take a look at those. We can easily produce them. We can maintain that sensitive information in a secure platform with TLS encryption, so you don't have to worry about it on a laptop or a computer or something like that in your office. And we can automatically have all that W-9 information that we don't want to rekey or have errors in, populate all the fields in your 1099s automatically, so we don't have to worry about the transition from one form to the other. After all that's done, we can also look at the e-filing process, which is kind of the focus of what we're talking about here today. You know, once we get all that automation, we get all the information gathered, the most important part is that we have to file all that to the IRS, and we have certain times that we have to do that. So we just have a couple that are pictured here as well. We can make it paper-free the whole time through. We can export information from accounting platforms or wherever else you might have it and import it into the Avalara system for ease of use instead of having to key everything in like we talked about. We can also find those errors before they become large-scale concerns around the Social Security numbers, tax identification numbers, legal names, those types of things. While you're e-filing, we can do some verification on that side as well. So we should have you covered throughout the process to make sure that we don't have any issues with that going forward. When it comes down to it here, we've got kind of three different pieces that we look at on the IRS and each of these states individually, as well as the vendors. Starting with the IRS there, we can just transfer data from year to year. A lot of the people you might work with ongoing, we can easily have all that information automated, updated, and complete, so you don't have to worry about regathering it or trying to figure out if it's correct, those types of things. We can also recheck any tax identification numbers that fail at no additional charge, just to make sure that everything is correct. If you put it through wrong and then you want to double check and make sure if it's correct or not, we can do that as part of that process. We also have all those IRS forms through a bulk export. If we need to get that information quickly, we sure can. The other side of that on the states, now we have the combined federal and state filing program for 1099s. We automatically participate in that and can allow you to do the same. We also can e-file to states requiring any extra filings. Those extra filings might have additional fees depending on the state and the type of extra filings they require, but it's something we can easily automate and do for you as well. The last piece of this, of course, is the vendor side, which some of you might be on that side as well with different people you work with. We can e-deliver 1099 copies to your vendors if their consent is obtained automatically without having to worry about that. And if you like, or if people require it, you can also use postal mail to deliver those 1099s to vendors also. As you can imagine, there might be a little more cost for the postal mail, but it is something that can easily be automated from your side without having to figure out which forms and which paper stock and what type of information you need from that side as well. We're going to move into a couple other pieces here as well around customers, but first, Jess, I might just want to double check with you. Do we have anybody that has any questions or anything like that so far?
I do not have any questions so far.
All right, well, they can use the chat if they want or follow up directly with us later so we can keep rolling through here. Thank you. All right, we'll get through the customers. We do help over 300,000 businesses with these types of things, so it's something that we're very familiar with here at Avalara. We've got a couple of customer quotes, which are always nice. Instead of just listening to something that I tell you, we have some customers that tell us here as well. We've got one here as well. They used Avalara 1099 W9 for the last few years, and they saved a lot of money, eliminated a great deal of year-end aggravation, which I'm sure you guys don't have, but other customers do. They don't have to use paper forms and figure out how to get them to line up in the printer and get them to the post office. They like our system to email vendors. And they did have an interface with QuickBooks Online. If you have that, we have a variety of systems we interface with, including QuickBooks. So you just upload a basic file with all that data. And they were truly improved with their year-end process and their peace of mind, this owner said. So we've got all sorts of different information like that we have. Just another one I wanted to highlight here. this company called Bookkeeper 360. We file their customers' 1099s on time and with ease. They couldn't get through tax season without it, which we like when Nick and people like that tell us good things. Last one, because I like reading these so much. My team loves Avalara 1099s and W9s. It's so much easier than in the past. It handles so many of the details and follow up for us. Thanks, Pam. So a couple of the things I wanted to make sure that we talked about here real quick. What do we have to do from a 1099 and W9 solution? What do you need to accomplish with that? Really two different pieces that we look at here. So the first section over here, making things more efficient. We can e-file the 1099s both to the IRS and to each of the individual states. We can also e-deliver copies to your vendors if they've opted in to that service. We can transfer information from the 1099s that we've received directly to, or from the W9s we received, pardon me, directly to the 1099s that we need to produce in real time and make it pretty easily and automated for you. We can save and transfer that data from one year to the next without any issue. We can also go all paperless if we need to as well. So that's something that we can easily do. The other side over there, we also reduce that risk that we worry about from the IRS. We match the taxpayer ID numbers, so recipients can prevent some of those fines from the IRS for getting those incorrect. We do a verification step right before the end, and we flag errors before you file to the IRS. You'd rather have it before than after, so we do have a way to point those out as part of that process. We also allow you to, as we talked about, to recheck a previously failed and at no additional charge. So if you do have an issue, that's something we can work through, and we're not going to charge you for a bunch of extra calls if you have to go back and just verify what's going on or if that number is valid. We've seen all the time where different people are like, oh, well, I've registered that and that should come through your system. Well, we'll let you know when it does. We'll make sure that it does and it does come through correctly. And then lastly, on the risk side, we can keep your vendor's information secure and keep it accessible for the IRS as well. So you don't have to worry about things sitting around on PCs or laptops or phones or files or anything like that in your office there too. So we can go ahead if you like. There's a couple different ways that we can show you the information that we have here. We can set up a demo with our team to work through it. When it comes to that, we can contact us through the PeopleSense team. You can also contact us directly if you'd like as well. We do want to make sure we tie that into our friends at PeopleSense because they were nice enough to host this webinar today. So if you do want to learn more, you can send us a chat here in the meeting and we can follow up directly. You can email me directly as well. That's my email at Avalara. Or you can also email Jess or Jim or any of our friends over at PeopleSense as well, and they can go ahead and get you more information about that. We've got a quick little video link that we can send that gives you a really nice summary, much better than I can present as far as how the 1099s work here at Avalara, and all sorts of other information we can give you along with pricing and validation steps, those types of things too. From there, I'll probably turn it back over to Jess and see if we have any other questions or anything else we want to catch up on with everybody in the meeting today.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you for the presentation today. And it looks like we do not have any questions, but if you guys would like, we can also send you the recording of this if you'd like to pass it along to anybody on your team. We'd be happy to do that. And then, as Kevin said, you can contact any single one of us here at PeopleSense, or you can contact Kevin, and we'll get you all set up and taken care of with your tax needs. So thank you, everybody, for today, and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, guys.